and we're going to jump right into Compass. So we did our upgrade to Compass last Tuesday night. We've got a couple things that are really, really excited about that we're going to cover in depth today. But at any time, if you're ever wondering, when there was an update, what those were, what took place in those, at the bottom right-hand corner on whatever screen you're in Compass, you should see what's new. And you can simply click on that link, and that's going to show you the release notes for that upgrade. You can see the latest one was on the 29th, and we can scroll on down. You'll see August 18th, the updates that were there. So if for some reason you missed this call or you don't want to go to YouTube and watch the video, because we are recording these and uploading them to our YouTube channel, but if you don't want to take those steps, you can always just go ahead and click on the What's New. So what we're looking at right now is we're going to really focus on the two new items that came into this release. We've got a few updates to existing things. I encourage you to read those. A couple nice ones are global contact filters. We are keeping the filters in play until you actually delete the filter or clear it, and that makes it really nice for you. If you're doing updates to a contact, you can go to the location page, make your update, go right back to the global contacts, and your filter is still in place. You don't have to keep redoing your filter. And there's a couple other things you can look at as well, as far as like Compass mobile contacts and that type of thing. But what we really want to talk about today are the two new tabs that we've added to My Dashboard. And let's jump right over to My Dashboard so we can take a look at these and talk about them and kind of show you what information is on these two tabs and how we think at CMS these can be beneficial to not only you as a dealer, but your customers and CMS. So all three people we think, or all three parties actually win from these use of these tabs. So the very first one I want to talk about is about fifth one down. You'll see dialed numbers, brand new tab. And if we click on that, what this is going to show you as a dealer is these are the dialed phone trends for the last 12 months. So what is the dialed phone trends? Well, this is keeping track of every single phone call that one of our monitoring reps, or all of our monitoring reps, have made to your accounts, whether it be on the premises, whether it be on the contact list, or I need to mention right now, if you start looking at this later on, you're going to see agency phone numbers listed right there. Those are going to get cleaned up and removed, because we don't need to count, we don't need to look at the agencies because it'll kind of skew the numbers and stuff like that. So that number is going to get cleaned up. You won't see the agencies listed down here in your top dialed numbers probably after our October update, which is coming up in a couple weeks. So that's getting cleaned up. But what this is showing you on this top widget is your answer percentage rate for all the phone calls that were made by our monitoring reps to your customers and their contacts. And just to kind of give you some feedback or some history, we did a study last year, 2019, from January 1st to October 31st, every single phone call that was made by our monitoring reps and what the answer rate was that was. And it ended up being, for those 10 months, the entire average across the board for CMS was a 32% answer rate. So that means 32% of the time, people are actually answering the phones when we call them. So what's that mean on the other hand? That means that 68% of the times they're completely ignoring us, and they're not answering their phones whatsoever. So keeping that in mind, that's your baseline, right? So if CMS's average overall for every single dealer is 32%, this phone trend widget is going to give you a really good idea of where you stand. So if we're looking here, October 20th, we're pretty high right now. It's 44.89%, in regards to the CMS average. It's still fairly low though, right? Because that means 1 out of every 2 calls that aren't getting answered. And if we also look at this, we got to remember that we're only 8 days into the month of October. So let's step back to our first full month. It's September 2020. 39.57, 34.5 in August, 40. So we're staying, for this dealer, again, it's a fake dealer, but we're staying pretty consistent in our answer rate. Now, why are our numbers so high? Well, basically because these are training accounts, and we're actually faking the numbers because our monitoring reps that are training are making the phone calls and someone's actually answering, so they train. But I think you'll be pretty surprised if you log into your Compass account, use your login, and look at your numbers. I think you're going to be fairly surprised at how low the answer rate really is. Now, there are some dealers out there that they've got the customers and they're answering their phones all the time, and their contacts are answering the phones all the time, and that's great. But every time I've shown this to a dealer so far since last Tuesday, they've been pretty surprised at how low that answer rate is. So what can you do with that? What's that telling you? If we're making, 10 calls and they're only getting answered 3 times, do we need to be calling those 7 numbers, or do we need to call that number 7 more times? Maybe that's a customer or a contact that could get changed to SMS notification or email notification. If they're going to answer the phone call, they're going to answer their SMS. I've watched people in restaurants look at their text messages all the time while they're sitting there eating, but they'll simply ignore the phone call that comes in. They'll swipe left and ignore it. But they're looking at their SMS text notifications. So maybe that's what we need to do with some of our contacts and some of our customers, change those phone numbers over to SMS notifications, and then they'll actually get notified of the events we're trying to notify them on. So that's what you're looking at right here. You're looking at these percentages and, just seeing how they are on average compared to what CMS. And keep in mind, you don't see it on here, but just keep that 32% in mind. That's what CMS is averaging on whole. So now we look down here on our widget on our left-hand side. We see top dialed numbers. So this is showing us the top dialed numbers by our monitoring reps. Okay, so the current month, like I said, is only 8 days long. So let's go back 1 full month. So if we can get a gist of phone numbers that were called by CMS monitoring reps, we can see here this is a fancy phone number. Not a lot of people answer this phone number. Not a lot of people call it, but it happens to be on 80 different sites for this customer. For my dealer number, we called it 1,342 times in the month of September. It got answered 513 times. So we called it 1,342 times. Someone answered 513 times. That's an answer rate of 38.23%. You'll notice that's in the red. If I go down here to the bottom, or to the midway, I've got this phone number. It's on one site. It was called 37 times, answered 24 times, 64.86%. That's a little bit better. That's why you see it in the green. Anything over 50% is going to be in the green. Anything below 50% is going to be the red. Those are kind of the numbers you kind of want to look at and maybe address. And you're going to find some numbers. I guarantee you're going to see some numbers in here like this one here, where it was called on one site, called 7 times, never answered. You're going to see some 0% answer rate. And those are the ones that you really want to address, especially if they're getting called a lot. Because what's that doing? Well, a couple things. It's wasting monitoring reps' time because they're making a phone call that person's not ever going to answer. And 2, it's probably frustrating your customer that they're getting these calls. They may have already blocked that phone number altogether, so we're not even getting through at all because they got tired of the phone calls. So that's one that you want to reach out to the customer and talk to them. If it's a customer or a contact on the customer's account, hey, the monitoring station's calling this phone number and they're not answering. Do you want to remove them from the contact list, or do you want to change them to an SMS notification? And that's automated. They'll get an SMS and they'll be done. They don't have to answer the phone call, or they don't have to ignore the phone call. So that's really what this widget is going to show you. It's going to show you those numbers that we're calling the most, and then it's going to break down how many times we're contacting those phone numbers when we do call them. And this is just for the last previous month. You can drop this all the way down to the last 6 months to really get a shock value if you want. And you can see on this one here, this zero is across the board. 119 sites, we called it 6,400 times. They contacted 2,400 times, again, for a 38% answer rate. So even some of these other ones, you've got this one here. This one's only on one site. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6. It's on one site. We call it 162 times. They answered 72 times. That's 44% of the time. Okay, so that's what this top dialed widget's showing you. Most called phone numbers and how often they answered and that percentage rate. And what you really want to do is you want to kind of dive after these numbers where you see 15% answer rate. Call it 67 times. They only answered 10 times. 15%. Those are your targets to either get removed from the contact list or get changed to the SMS notifications. So the other widget on this page is probably a familiar widget if you've been on the dashboard. It's the wrong numbers on subscribers. So this widget used to be located on the repeat activity and the fire activity because we really didn't have a place for it to go. So we put it on there, but now it's found its home. It's at the right place where it should be because these are phone numbers that our monitoring reps have called. And while they've called them, whether it's the premise phone number or the contact phone number, they've encountered that it's a wrong number, either like number not working, out of service, whatever. When they get that, they go ahead and log that to the account, and then it's going to show up on here. So now you can go in and you can see, okay, James Simpleton, here's the account, had a wrong phone number. You can click on that. It's going to take you over to the location page, and you'll see this site note that was created by our monitoring rep for the wrong phone number. You can see the premises number, 111-111-1111 is a non-working phone number. So what do you do with that if you see it? Well, as a dealer, you can look at that and you can say, okay, that's a bad phone number. Let me get a hold of Mr. Simpleton somehow and find out, maybe only 111-5555 is the correct number. Let's remove this number so CMS doesn't waste their time calling a non-working phone number. So you call them, and it's either going to be on the premises phone number, but again, like I said earlier, it could be a contact phone number as well. So if it's a bad phone number, let's get them removed or get it updated so it's a correct phone number. And that's exactly what you're looking for when you see that wrong phone number list on that widget. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the dashboard, and let's get back to the dialed numbers. So those are our three widgets that are on the dialed numbers right now, okay? We've talked about the dialed phones trend. That's going to be a rolling 12-month history. So that's going to do that, your top dialed numbers, and then your wrong phone numbers on subscribers. And again, you can change these search parameters. This is the last 24 hours. I could change this to the last 7 days. It's still just that one single account. Okay, so our next tab that we want to talk about is the OHA tab. OHAs in our world stand for Operator Handled Alarms. Simply put, these are alarm signals or signals from the panel that are coming in and dropping to a monitoring rep. So a monitoring rep at CMS has to do something with this account. Okay, it may be calling the premise just to notify them of a trouble. It might be a full-on burg or a full-on fire where they're calling the premises, they're calling the dispatch agencies, they're calling the contact list, whatever. Those are all considered operator-handled alarms. And what this is doing for you right now is you'll notice it's basically the same layout as the dialed numbers tab, but it's a little bit different because this trend, the 12-month trend you see up here is not a percentage anymore. It's your total number of OHAs during that month. Okay, and again, it's 12 months rolling, so we've got October 2020 on to the far left. Again, it's only eight days old, but we've already had 284 signals drop to CMS monitoring reps in the month of October. Okay, so we can kind of look at that and we can see, do we have a trend? Well, yeah, I can see a trend right now. In June, we were pretty low, right? 1894. Maybe because people weren't working at that time, they're stay-at-homes, whatever, so people weren't setting their alarms off. But now all of a sudden it opened back up. On July, we jumped up to 2891. August is 3,000. September was 3,400. So now we're starting to climb. So now as a dealer, I want to kind of start looking at that, and I want to see, do I have a trend? Do I have some accounts out there that are sending in too many signals? And if they are, maybe they're signals that don't need to get called on, but again, go back to that whole SMS or email auto notification process. Maybe they're trouble signals for like low batteries or AC power failures, residential. You can typically change those to an SMS or email auto notification, and then you don't have to make those phone calls. And again, everybody ends up being happier because the customer's not getting a call to tell them that the power's out. They're getting a text message to see that the power's out or that they have a low battery. Then they can go ahead and contact you to get that battery replaced. So that's what you're kind of looking at. You're looking for these trends on how high your OHAs are going. And you want to obviously keep those as low as you possibly can because that allows for the CMS reps to handle real burg signals. And you're not going to do a whole lot to drop your burgs, your fires, your high priority stuff like your panics and holdups. Can't do too much on that, but that's what you want the monitoring reps to be handling anyway, right? You don't necessarily want them handling, low battery signals or even missed timer tests and stuff like that unless it's a very high priority account. But by keeping this low, then you're keeping it true to what they really should be working on. So you're looking at your OHA trend up here. Now on the left, you're going to look at your top OHAs, and this is broken down by service types. Okay, so you can see here timer tests, bird signals, medicals, fires, troubles. So the idea is not to just look at the total signals that are coming in, but what makes up the total signals, right? So you look at the top OHAs. These are broken down by service types. So I could just say as a dealer, hey, change all my troubles to SMS or auto notification for SMS or email. That should fix everything, right? But if I look at my service type, I only have 192 signals that make up 3,437. So I'm not putting much of a dent in there. It's going to help it a little bit, right? So that's a good thing. Any bit can help. But if I really want to look at this, I want to look at, and this is a bad example because you guys aren't going to have this, receiver signals. So if I want to make a dent in my 3,437 signals, I want to go after my receiver signals. Let's find out what accounts have these receiver signals coming in on them. And because that's 1,021 of the 34. That makes up almost 30% of all my OHAs for the month of September. The timer test is a really good example, and I think you guys might have a lot of those, especially if you got commercial accounts and stuff like that. That makes up 27.26% of my 3437. And you can see here, we've called customers on this, 0% answer rate, 0% answer rate. On Bergs, there's a 42% answer rate. Here's a system-generated alarm, 0%. So this is going back to your dialed numbers and how often the people are answering on the signals when they came in. Okay, so it's showing you the total number of OHAs in this column, what percentage that makes up of that month, and then the answer rate when we've made the phone calls to either verify or notify. Okay, and so when you see these 0%, especially with the timer test, if you look at your accounts and you see 0% or a really low answer rate on your timer test, those are really good prospects for SMS or email auto notification because they're not answering the phone when we call them to let them know there was a missed timer test, to let them go ahead and get that auto notification and work it from there. Okay, so this is showing you your by service type. Now over here on the right-hand side in this widget, you're looking at the active accounts. So this is a really good one to look at. Again, let's change this to the previous month so we have a full working month. And you'll see here, this is going to show you your most active accounts. Do you have some accounts out there that are sending a lot of OHAs? Are they the violators that you need to look at? In this case here, for my dealer, yes. I've got probably 3, maybe 4 that make up a majority of my 3,437 signals. You can see here, this shift 1 and this receiver and this receiver and this tech room, they're all above 300 OHAs for the month. And this one's close to 600. So these are the accounts I want to look at. I want to find out what's going on. So what do I do with that one? Well, let's look at that very first one. So let's click on the account number. It's going to take us back to the location page. And we can see what's happening on this one. Let's go to the location activity. And we'll see right here, they've got a missed timer test that's coming in, and we're supposed to call the premises, the call list, and the corporate account number. So that's multiples. That's at least 1, 2, at least 3 phone calls that we're making. No one's answering them. And you'll also notice it's coming in every single hour. So for some reason, this account got set up to send a 1-hour timer test. And guess what? It's not. So if I'm a dealer and I look at this and I can see 583 in the last month, what's going on with this? A, why is it set up to send a 1-hour timer test? Is it a high profile? Is it a bank? Is it a pawn shop? Something like that? And if it is, then we definitely need to get it fixed because we're getting missed timer tests. So that's what you're wanting to look for. So a couple different things you could do with this. If it is a high profile, then you definitely want to get the panel fixed, right? Or the phone line or the cell unit, so it's communicating properly. If it's not, let's say it's a residential account or just a regular commercial account. Why is it set up for an hour? Let's go ahead and change that to either, a weekly, a monthly, even a daily would be better than the hourly. So we could do a lot with that. And do we really need to be calling the premises, the call list, and the corporate account if it's just a standard account and not a high profile pawn shop bank or something like that? You could change those, and you could change it to an SMS notification, or a log only, and that gets picked up by the dealer on their reports the next day. So that's really what you're looking for on that dashboard and that widget. You're looking for those accounts that stand out and the ones that are making up the most of your activity. Okay, so again, we'll go back here to the previous month. And we see that the 583 of the 3437, that's that account. So we could clean that up, and that would drop that number drastically right off the bat. Okay, so even right now, if we're looking at the current month of October 20th, let's change this to the current month. I've got one account that has sent 71 signals that make up my 285. So again, I'm already seeing that right now, 8 days into my month. I need to worry about this account right now. I need to get on it before the end of the month because I want to keep my OHAs as low as possible. Okay, so we really think that those two tabs are going to help everybody out, and I really encourage everyone when we get done here or when you get some time, log into Compass and go to those tabs and kind of take a look at them and kind of digest the numbers that you see there. And if you've got questions, about some of the information that you're seeing there, all of our BDSRs, so whoever your BDSR might be, they have the answers. They know these numbers pretty well. You could probably call dealer support. There's some people in dealer support that know this information as well. You can shoot me an email as well and say, hey, I was looking at my top OHAs and I've got a question about this. Just shoot me an email and I'll fire an email right back to you and hopefully be able to answer your questions. But we're kind of hoping, like I said, that by using these two tabs, everyone's going to win by it because, one, you're going to help the CMS reps to not waste their time making phone calls. You're going to help yourself because you're going to have happier customers because the happier customers aren't getting called constantly and they're not getting barraged by just phone calls. So they're always having to swipe left to ignore or they're blocking the number, which is even worse, right? So all three parties can win off of this by using these two tabs and hopefully, switching a lot of them to the SMS or the email notification and kind of taming down the OHAs as well. So that's going to wrap us up